All right, today we are diving deep into one single pivotal day in British history, a day that absolutely shattered a powerful workers' alliance, left over 1 million people feeling completely betrayed, and really set the stage for the biggest industrial dispute the country had ever seen. This is the story of Black Friday.
So let's set the scene. The date is Friday, April 15th, 1921. This was supposed to be the day the full force of Britain's working class was going to bring the entire country to a grinding halt in a massive show of solidarity.
Yeah, but it didn't happen. Instead, that day got a pretty infamous nickname, a name that would echo with shame and bitterness in mining towns for decades. So what happened? Why did it all fall apart? What went so disastrously wrong?
To figure that out, we've got to first understand the event itself. This was the moment a supposedly unbreakable pact just shattered into 1 million pieces. You see, the plan was simple, on paper at least. You had over 2 million workers from 3 absolutely essential industries, the miners, the railwaymen, and the transport workers, and they were all going to strike together. This triple alliance, as it was called, was the miners' trump card. But on Black Friday, just hours before it was all supposed to kick off, their partners folded, leaving them to face the powerful mine owners completely on their own.
And this quote from a Welsh Labour MP at the time, Vernon Hartshorn, it just captures the raw feeling of that moment perfectly. The miners felt cheated, not just by their allies, but by a government they really believed had broken its promises.
Now, a betrayal like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. To really get why it went down the way it did, we need to zoom out and take a look at the world of 1921 Britain, an economy and a society that was, well, built on coal.
I mean, you really cannot overstate how important coal was. It powered literally everything. But the industry itself was notoriously brutal. It was defined by this deep, deep hostility. The miners, the colliers, were tough people living in isolated communities, and the owners were famous for being incredibly stubborn. Their disputes weren't just disagreements. They were fought with no holds barred.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the scale we're talking about. In 1913, right before the war, Britain produced a staggering 287 million tons of coal. This wasn't just an industry, it was the engine of a global empire.
But after World War I, that post-war boom came to a screeching halt. The government, which had actually been controlling the mines during the war, saw prices tumbling and losses piling up. So on March 31st, they just abruptly handed the whole industry back to the private owners, which basically set the stage for a massive confrontation.
Faced with collapsing profits, the owners immediately posted notices at every single pit head, and their solution was simple and brutal: wage cut. In the hardest-hit areas like South Wales, which depended on exports, they proposed cutting wages by as much as 49%. Just imagine that for a second.
And while the government was publicly saying, "Oh, we're neutral," this private note from Prime Minister David Lloyd George to his cabinet reveals what they were really thinking. He wrote, "Sooner or later got to have wages down." They knew wages had to fall. This wasn't just some industrial dispute, this was national policy.
So here's the crucial point. This wasn't just about money. It was a fundamental clash over how the entire industry should be run, a battle between 2 completely opposing visions for the future.
Okay, so on one side you had the miners, and they were backed by their powerful allies in the Triple Alliance. This pact, formed way back in 1914, brought the miners together with the railwaymen and the transport workers, creating this formidable force. It was their greatest weapon, a symbol of working-class solidarity, designed for exactly this kind of fight.
And here is the core of the disagreement, laid bare. It's like they were living on different planets. The miners wanted a national system, right? Where profits from the rich coal fields could help support wages in the poorer ones. But the owners, they wanted a return to the old way. Just fierce, pit-by-pit competition, where every district fends for itself, even if it meant slashing wages to the bone to survive.
The centerpiece of the miners' plan was this idea: the national pool. It was pretty innovative, a way to level the playing field. But to the owners and the government, it looked a lot like a step towards nationalization, government ownership of the industry. They saw it as an attempt to use industrial muscle for a political end, and they absolutely refused to even consider it.
Which brings us right to the edge of the cliff, the final frantic hours. With both sides totally dug in, the country was just bracing for a strike of over 2 million men. The showdown was literally hours away.
And this is where it all unraveled with just breathtaking speed.
On the evening of April 14th, with the clock ticking, the miners' secretary, a guy named Frank Hodges, made an off-the-cuff remark to some members of parliament. He basically suggested they might be willing to talk about wages temporarily, separate from their non-negotiable national pool idea. Well, the very clever Prime Minister Lloyd George was told about this immediately. He saw his opening, a crack in the miners' united front, and he pounced, offering last-minute talks to exploit that division. But when the miners' executive met the next morning, their hardline president Herbert Smith was furious. He felt Hodges had shown weakness and sold them out. So he flatly rejected the government's offer and publicly disowned what Hodges had said. And that was the final straw for the miners' allies. They saw a leadership in complete chaos, one guy undercutting another. They just weren't willing to risk a devastating national strike, paralyzing the whole country, for a cause led by a group that seemed divided and probably doomed to fail.
I mean, the scene at the union headquarters was just pure bedlam. Leaders were shouting at each other in the hallways, and the man at the center of it all, Frank Hodges, the one who tried to find a way out, was found completely broken, just slumped over a desk, weeping. And with those 4 simple words from the Railwaymen's leader, J.H. Thomas, to a crowd of reporters, it was over. It's all off, boys. The Triple Alliance was dead. Black Friday had arrived, and the miners were now utterly and completely alone.
So, what happened next? Well, the miners, to their credit, fought on. But without the support of the railwaymen and transport workers, the outcome was pretty much inevitable. The legacy of this defeat would be long, and it would be bitter. This slide shows you the brutal reality. After fighting alone for 3 long months, the miners were essentially starved back to work. Their average weekly pay plummeted by over 34% in just 9 months. It left them with wages that were actually 20% lower than before the war. This meant real poverty and hardship for hundreds of thousands of families.
The consequences were profound. The Triple Alliance? History. But more importantly, this defeat didn't bring peace. Not at all. It bred this deep-seated desire for revenge, a need to wipe out the shame of Black Friday. This one event directly paved the way for the even bigger confrontation of the 1926 general strike.
In the end, Black Friday was really a clash of philosophies. You had guys like Hodges, who saw a future in negotiation and compromise. And then you had men like Herbert Smith, who represented the old way, just harsh, unforgiving class war. On Black Friday, Smith's hardline stance won the day, but it was a victory that cost his members everything. Which leaves us with a final crucial question. With so much bitterness, and with this need to avenge the defeat hanging in the air, was the nation now on an unstoppable course towards an even greater conflict? Was something even bigger now inevitable?